Hi, welcome back to Dad Has ADD channel. This is the first time I'll be cooking a random recipe from my cookbook collection. And if you remember from a couple of videos ago, the first recipe that we picked randomly, we just used one cookbook this time. It was How to Cook Everything Vegetarian by Mark Bittman. And the random page we selected had scrambled eggs on it. So today I'll be making scrambled eggs, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to divide the recipe. I'm going to do half of it as plain scrambled eggs and half of it with some add-ins. I think I'm going to try and make some sort of Mexican scrambled eggs with some tomato, jalapenos, hot sauce, and pickled jalapenos, and maybe just a little bit of cheese. Okay, so let's look at our ingredients and then we'll get started with some of the prep work. Split this for you. Okay, here we go. Alright, so some of the tools we'll need: a whisk, paring knife, chef's knife. I usually like to use a bigger one than this, but the bigger one is in the dishwasher right now. Heat-proof rubber spatula. That's for cooking the eggs. I got a half cup for measuring out my tomatoes. I have my eggs. I usually use cage-free. I use organic if it's affordable. But if I can't get a carton of eggs for less than $3 or less, I usually don't get it. So these are just cage-free brown eggs. Got our salt and pepper. I used to have a really good pepper grinder, but with a crank on it, and ended up breaking, and I haven't been able to find one that I like just as much as that one. I'll have to go to some sort of fancy cooking store like Williams Sonoma or something like that. Okay, I got a tomato that we're going to chop. Our pickled jalapenos. Shredded cheese. This is pre-shredded. This is pre-shredded cheese. You can shred your own. It'll be fresher. I got butter. For the plain scrambled eggs, I'm going to use melted butter. And for the Mexican, I'm going to try to use a little bit of olive oil. For 2 eggs, I would say use between a half tablespoon and a full tablespoon of either butter or oil. And I have milk, and again, about half a tablespoon to a full tablespoon for every 2 eggs of milk. You can also use cream, heavy cream, light cream. Mark Bittman even says you can use water or lemon juice, but I don't know if I want to use water for mine. And then finally, Frank's Red Hot. I'm going to do a couple splashes of this on the second recipe. Okay, so let's get started with our prep work. I'm going to bring this a little closer. Okay, so first, tomato. I'm going to need about a half a cup of this because it says for 4 eggs you can mix in as much as a cup of chopped tomato, but since I'm only going to be using this for 2 eggs, I'm just going to use a half a cup. I'm going to take out the seeds and the kind of the white mushy stuff. So I don't really want all that. I don't want the eggs to be too watery, and I think it's a little jarring to have all those seeds in there. Okay, I think we might need to use almost this whole tomato, so I'm going to get rid of the rest of these seeds. Okay, you'll probably find out from watching my channel that I'm not the fastest cook in the world. I don't think I could ever be on any of those shows, Chopped or Master Chef or anything like that. I wouldn't, I'd fold under pressure. Okay, so I have these. Now we're going to move to a bigger knife, make it easier to chop these. Okay, So, in his instructions for adding things to scrambled eggs, Mark Bittman says to keep them relatively small. So I'm just doing a pretty small dice here. I'd say a little less than a 1/4 inch, or maybe about a 1/4 inch. Get this measuring cup, and we'll do this one. Okay. May not need the whole tomato. Now that I'm about halfway full, I'm going to add a tiny bit of salt to my tomatoes, and I'm going to add less salt to the eggs since I'm doing this. But I like to salt my tomatoes a little bit. I think it gives them good flavor, even when I'm mixing them in something. Just a tiny bit of salt. Alright, looks like I have to do at least one more section here. I'm going to leave a little room at the top of the measuring cup to add some of the pickled jalapenos. Again, I'm not going to add a ton of those because I don't want it to be super hot. I just want a little bit of a kick there to give it that kind of Mexican flair. Alright. Maybe just a tiny bit more tomato. Could actually probably use the whole thing. Look at that, we used the whole thing. Okay, got these in here. Sprinkle them with a tiny more salt again. Again, just a tiny light sprinkling. You'd rather err on the side of having less salt than too much salt. Alright, so this is just a pop top. Don't have to use a can opener. Oh boy. Apparently these have carrots in them. Who knew? Couldn't even say on the outside. Oh, carrots in there. Alright, we're not going to use the carrots. So just take out some of these jalapenos. Just a few of these pickled jalapenos. That's what they look like. Okay, try maybe this much. 3 pieces here. It looks like these already have the seeds removed, which is good. Usually when you work with hot peppers, you want to remove the seeds and the veins because that'll make them extra spicy. And again, the seeds are just a little bit, especially pepper seeds, they're even harder than, tomato seeds are kind of soft, but pepper seeds are hard. And that could be kind of jarring, especially in scrambled eggs. But these already have the seeds removed, so we don't have to worry about it. Okay. I'm just going to put this on top of the tomatoes here because I'm going to add it all together later. Okay. And just once again, my hands are clean. I wash them before I start cooking. Make sure you do the same. If you handle anything like raw eggs or raw meat, or even if you think you've handled something dangerous, just, give your hands a quick wash with soap and water again. Okay, so there we go. We got our tomatoes, pickled peppers. Got a ton of peppers left over. I'm not sure what I'm going to do with those. I'm going to have to find a way to use those. Okay. Alright. See if there's any other prep work we have to do. The butter we're going to melt in the microwave. It's because we're going to be using a non-stick pan, and we're let me adjust the camera again. Okay. The technique that Mark Bittman uses is he starts cooking the eggs from a cold pan. So he actually has the eggs in a cold pan before he starts to cook them. The way I always made scrambled eggs is I would heat the pan, I'd put the butter in, let the butter melt, and make sure it coats the pan, and then I'd put in my beaten eggs and start cooking that way. But he starts from a cold pan. So what we're going to do is we're going to start with a cold pan. We're going to put in the eggs. We're going to mix in some melted butter, some milk, and then we're going to, and a little bit of salt and pepper, and we're going to just cook the plain ones, and then we're going to do the ones with the mix-ins. Okay, so I'll see you over at the stove. Okay, so here we are. We're ready to cook our eggs. First, we're going to mix them. I got this bowl here. Again, this is a cold pan, so you don't have to worry about this bowl melting. I'm not the perfect egg cracker. That one looks good, no shell. Let's do the next one. Okay, that's the second one. Don't see any shell in there either. Alright, we're just gonna, Mark Bittman suggests mixing these just until the egg white and the yolk are mixed. You don't want to over mix them or else the eggs are going to be too hard. So we're going to do that just until they're mixed together. I think that's pretty good there. Okay, so we're going to pour this into our cold pan. Okay. Again, clean hands here. Get that nice and even there. Next we're going to add our butter. I have melted butter here. This is a little bit less than a tablespoon. I'm going to put that in there. And again with our clean hand, melted butter. Milk, I'm going to use a little bit less than a tablespoon, so it's going to be about half of this. I have enough milk here for the 2 recipes. So we're going to add half of this. Maybe a little more. Okay. Now, a little bit of pepper. Again, just do it to your taste. I always do kind of a light sprinkling when I season, both pepper and salt. And this is not the best pepper grinder. Again, salt, very lightly. Just do a little light sprinkling throughout the whole top of it. I don't want to over salt it. Okay, now we're going to turn on our heat. It's going to be medium-high heat. I got a gas range here. Okay. So what we're going to want to do, we got to stir in all this butter and milk. We want to be stirring constantly. Okay. Stirring constantly. It's going to start to heat up fast. And what we want to do is get nice small curds in there. And if the eggs start to dry out anywhere, we're going to want to take it off the heat a little bit. And so after this, like I said, these are the plain ones. Then we're going to do the Mexican style eggs. And hopefully you get a sense of how to make perfect scrambled eggs. And again, this is according to Mark Bittman, who was a food writer for the New York Times. He's written, I think, at least over a dozen cookbooks. He kind of made his mark with how to cook everything, which is almost like, one of those cooking Bibles, like a Joy of Cooking or Betty Crocker. But his aim to give you a bunch of basic recipes. Alright, so this is starting to curd up a little bit. I don't know if you can see that. Don't want to spill it out here. We're going to keep stirring. It's not quite drying up yet. So how to cook everything, it gave you a set of basic recipes, and then for each basic recipe, or almost all of them, he gave you variations for each one, so you could kind of mix it up a little bit. Right now you see these kind of like small curds starting to form. See the curds in there? And we just want to keep stirring. I know it's a little bit tedious to have to stand there and stir, but it ends up making better eggs in the long run, at least according to Mark Bittman's technique. It's starting to dry out a little bit in the middle there. See how it's starting to dry? We'll take it off the heat for a couple seconds. Taking it off the heat so it doesn't get overcooked. Alright, I'll put it back down. And he says you want to cook them until they're, fully cooked, but he says very slightly runny. He says you can cook them longer than that if that's the way you like them. But, right here they are. Look at them. They're forming up here. Making these curds small, trying to at least. This is what it's looking like. I'm going to show you at the end too what they look like. Okay, I'm going to scrape this down from the side. I'm probably going to take them out. Okay, that's those. We've got to watch the burner. Okay, now we're going to do the Mexican style ones. I'm going to turn off my heat, get a new pan. Okay, another cold pan. And we're going to do the same thing. 2 eggs. That was the wrong bowl. One egg. 2 eggs. Okay, I don't see any shell. Gonna add what's left of our milk after I spilled it. Gonna add some oil. I would say I'm gonna not add all this because I'm not sure about oil. I'm just adding a little bit of olive oil. It's about maybe a little over half a tablespoon. Some pepper. I mean, you can mix the milk and fat and salt and pepper in the pan with the egg if you want. Actually, should have done the egg first, but it's okay. A little bit of salt here. Not as much as before because I added salt to those tomatoes before, if you remember. Okay, mix this together just until the eggs are all formed. Again, I think I should have done the eggs first by themselves, but it's too late now. Okay, add them to our cold pan. Again, use a clean finger. Make sure your hands are clean. Can't stress that enough. Even if you're cooking it, you don't want to get anything weird in there. Alright. Get my spatula again. I'm going to mix this up a little bit more because there's a little bit of yolk. A little bit of white showing up there. Got to mix that in with the yolk. Okay, I'm going to add my mix-ins here. Now again, it said... This seems like a lot. But it said a cup for 4 eggs. So I guess that means half a cup for 2 eggs. Here's 2 eggs here. You add this before you start heating it up. The only thing you add later is the cheese after they start to firm up a little bit. I'm also going to add some hot sauce. Frank's. Here we go. Frank's Red Hot. I'm going to do 2 shakes. 1, 2. Mix that up. Okay, we're going to start heating this. Medium high. Medium high, there we go. I'm going to start mixing. Right away, we start mixing. Try and get those small curds. I don't know how this is going to look with those tomato pieces. Maybe I should have cut them smaller. I don't know. We're going to just keep stirring. The beginning is the hardest because it looks like nothing's happening in the beginning. So it's like you don't really want to stir. You just want to have them sit there and start to harden. But he says to stir the whole time, so that's what I'm doing. Here's a little bit of look at what it looks like. There you go. Keep it on the heat though right now. Keep stirring. I got my cheese standing by to add to it. Just keep stirring, keep stirring. This pan's a little bit bigger. I don't know how that's going to affect anything. I figured it would work out though since I'm adding more stuff to this one. And also I didn't want to take the time to wash the smaller one I just used. So I figured I'd just start with a new pan. Wow, these eggs are taking longer this time. I wonder why that is. I guess it's all the tomato and stuff in there. I'm what you'd call an amateur cook. Definitely not a professional. Definitely not a beginner. But I don't know, I'm not Alton Brown. I don't know the science behind everything. I just know that I like food, and I know that it's better to cook it than to go through a drive-thru or something like that. Trying to eat healthier, and part of eating healthier is not going through that drive-thru. Man, that drive-thru is tempting. But if I cook at home more, I'll start to eat healthier. Because even if you're making a cake or something, you have to sit down and make that cake. And if you don't feel like making that cake, you're not going to eat the cake. You go to the store or somewhere else and just pick up cake. It makes it a lot easier to eat cake. But if you take the time to make the batter, make the cookies or the cake, and you eat it, well, you earned it. As long as you don't do it every day. That's the thing about picking up in the store or a fast food place. It's so easy to do it in a day. I see some small curds starting to form now. Alright, this is starting to... I wonder if I'm going to speed up any of this on the final... Alright, those are starting to stick to the pan a little bit now, so I'm going to take it off the heat. See it there? Take it off the heat just until it stops to stick like that. Still sticking a little bit. It's sticking right in the middle there. Make it a little bit more off the heat. Alright, I'm going to bring it back down now. It's not sticking anymore. Again, remember to scrape it off the sides. And it's starting to form now. Wow, this is taking a lot longer with the add-ins, right? The other one was like right away. This is like, come on now. Wonder if it matters that I added less milk. I don't know. I got that spilled milk on the counter here. I got to clean up after this. Again, starting to stick a little bit. Let's take it off the heat. Keep stirring it. Keep getting all that. Make sure every piece of that egg hits the middle, the hot parts, cool parts of the pan. Just keep mixing it around. Make sure all the egg gets the heat. Scrape down the sides. These rubber spatulas, these heat-proof rubber spatulas are a godsend, I tell you that much. They're so good at scraping out bowls and just making sure you get every last little bit. They come in different shapes, sizes. I'm sure a lot of you are familiar, but for those of you that aren't, pick yourself up a set of these. I only have this one, but I'm thinking about getting a set of them. These... not really curding up. I have a feeling the plain ones might turn out better than these. I'm going to keep stirring them, doing what I'm supposed to do. And again, it's probably not Mark Bittman, it's probably me. This is my first time doing this. Alright. So make sure they're not like liquid still. But again, some of that liquid's probably coming from the tomato. I think what I'm finding out is I like adding stuff to my eggs better when it's an omelet, not scrambled. Alright, I think they're pretty much cooked. I'm just going to add in some cheese now that they've hardened up. I want to make this some sort of like Mexican omelet. Just a sprinkle. I'm not going to add too much. I'm not really a big fan of, how people call it cheesy eggs. It's just basically scrambled eggs with cheese in it, just cheese. Not a big fan of those, but since I'm making a Mexican style scrambled eggs, I'll add a little bit of cheese in there. Okay, I think this is the best these are going to get. I don't want to overcook them. I'm going to plate them, and then I'll meet you over at the table to try these out. Okay. Wow, I mean, cooking the eggs with those mix-ins was harder than I thought. I didn't think it was going to take that long. I didn't think I was going to be that unsure about whether it was done, whether it was curding up. I mean, the plain eggs went perfectly for me, but the mix-ins, I'm not so sure. But I'm going to taste them now and see how they turned out. First, let's take a look. Alright, there we go. Okay, here's the plain ones. And again, we just use a little bit of milk, butter, salt, and pepper. That's all we use for those. Over here, we got our Mexican eggs. Tomato, salted tomato, pickled jalapenos, 2 dashes of Frank's Red Hot, salt, pepper, milk, a little bit of olive oil. I wonder if it was the olive oil that messed these up. And let's see, what else? Oh, a little bit of cheese also, just a sprinkle of cheese. And again, if you guys have any ideas about, if you know why these turned out the way they did, feel free to leave, just let me know in the comments. Alright, so let's try these. Okay, here we go. I'm sweating from cooking the mix-in scrambled eggs. Okay, these are the plain ones. They look good. They're perfect. They're absolutely perfect. They're buttery, they're not too hard, they're perfect texture, perfect taste. I love them. Let's try the Mexican one. Now again, this Mexican style scrambled eggs wasn't really Mark Bittman's creation. It was me taking a number of his add-ins and kind of, combining them into my own sort of creation. Like he said, a cup of tomato for 4 eggs, or half a cup for 2 eggs. You could add pickled. And I took a few of those, and I decided to try to make some sort of thing out of it. Okay, well, look at them. They don't taste bad, but texture doesn't feel like scrambled eggs. They're a little too watery. Again, I tried to get most of the watery part of the tomato out, but they just didn't curd up enough. Again, I'm going to eat the whole plate, so they're not horrible, but I just wish they looked like the plain eggs, looked like the plain eggs, but just dotted with the tomato. I just wish they were a little more appealing. So that was it. That was our random recipe today. Again, it was from Mark Bittman's How to Cook Everything Vegetarian. 2 different scrambled egg recipes. And again, if you want to make a plain eggs yourself, you just need 4 eggs, 1 to 2 tablespoons of some sort of liquid like milk, cream, light cream, heavy cream, and then 1 to 2 tablespoons of fat. So that could be butter, which I suggest for plain ones, or oil. Again, I think I really recommend the butter there. And then just, salt and pepper to taste. And again, start with a cold pan, mix the whole time, keep the curd small. If it starts to dry out in any place of the pan, take the pan off the burner, and you'll be good to go. And just be careful with the mix-ins. Usually with the mix-ins, he said, try to put a half a cup of any sort of vegetable that you're going to be mixing in, except for tomatoes. A half a cup for 4 eggs. If it's tomatoes, it's a whole cup for 4 eggs. Hot sauce, it's to taste. Pickled jalapenos, it's to taste. What else did he say? Again, cheese, you got to wait till the eggs start to harden before you add that. Trying to think of this. Oh, herbs. I think it was like a tablespoon of fresh herbs he recommended for 4 eggs. Again, if you pick up his book, he has a whole list of mix-ins there. But the plain ones taste pretty good. So coming up on my channel, I'm going to be picking the next recipe. It's pretty exciting because we're going to be picking from 6 different recipe books. And I think I mentioned last time that I was going to use random.org to randomly pick the recipe. That plan is out. I'm going to use dice because dice are more fun. So I'm going to use dice to pick the which of the 6 cookbooks, and then I'm going to use dice to pick the page in the cookbook to pick the recipe. So that should be pretty exciting. But before that, Wingstop is coming out with 2 new flavors this Friday, and I'm going to pick them up hopefully Friday, maybe a day or so after, and I'm going to do a review of those next. So again, subscribe, If you have any questions, comments, leave them down in the comments. Thank you for watching, and have a good day.